Thank you for listening to the Allender Center podcast. I'm Dr. Dan Allender.
And I'm Rachael Clinton Chen. We're fiercely committed to providing hope and healing to a fragmented world.
And restoration for the heart.
Thank you for joining us. Let's get this conversation started. Well, Dan, we are back with Heather Stringer, our friend, colleague, and ritual maker. And as we mentioned in our previous podcast, Heather is part of the Allender Center team. She's a therapist, and she is a ritual maker, among many other things. And we've been having a conversation around the difference between routine and ritual, the power of ritual, the need of ritual, especially in the midst of a season like COVID-19. And, I've actually had the profound privilege of being a part of a ritual with Heather that I actually kind of commissioned her to do. This is something that she is willing and so gifted to do on behalf of others. You can find more out at lifeinritual.com, where Heather kind of talks more about her work with ritual. But I asked Heather to do a ritual with me, and I've mentioned this before actually on a previous podcast. I went through a pretty significant sexual assault many years ago. And in the healing process of coming to do work around all that had been kind of ravaged with regard to my heart, mind, and body, and felt this kind of very small growing bud of desire that had felt so kind of squelched in the midst of that season. And obviously, any of us who have known a traumatic experience, it always beckons to more trauma. So, of course, my healing journey extended beyond that trauma to more thematic trauma in my life, and in therapeutic work was just coming to this place of knowing it was time to reclaim what I had come to call this woman who had kind of been cast into the shadowlands, this part of me. This woman who loved, I was needing a really tangible and also communal way to mark entering a threshold of healing, and all the fear and terror that came along with that. And so at the time, I knew this about Heather. I had the privilege of going to school with her and witnessing her capacity to bring into the tangible a practice or a moment to kind of undergo something that would help kind of capture the meaning, but also release something. And so I had this incredible privilege to work with Heather. And one of the things, Heather, I found so powerful was the way in which I think we met for maybe 2 hours. And you asked me a series of questions about my life, about what I was hoping for. And you actually created kind of this liturgy for the ritual that was drawing from my life in a way that was so, I felt so seen and so known, but also so invited. It felt like I was being called back to life from the Shadowlands by someone who was using kind of textures of my own life and story to call me back to life, and friends that got to witness that, and really tangible things we did, like dig our hands in soil and plant things and yell at the moon and do yoga poses and, singing and storytelling. And so I wanted our listeners to hear a little bit from you. How do you do this work of taking someone's story, a place in their story that's so textured? And what does this creative process look like for you as you come to kind of create an opportunity, a ritual that is usually so particular and so nuanced, yet has that kind of universal kind of reality to it as well, that others can participate and be a part of something on behalf of someone else that actually is also for them?
Thank you for those kind words. Yeah, it was such a lovely thing to be part of that time with you. I mean, I think that's the beauty of it, is that it's so poignant that it's just, I can return to those moments so easily.
Mhm.
And that's part of the benefit of being able to make rituals for people and facilitate them, is that, yeah, I get to enter into people's lives in a way that is just really meaningful. And then to see community gather and um, be so willing to engage in those ways. It's so good. So, yeah, I'm grateful for being able to be a witness, and a collaborator in that time with you. But yeah, I think for me, it's like, I mean, our stories, if you were to think about them, when I listened to you, Rachel, when you were talking, it was like colors were coming. It was like red
Mhm.
felt like such a color that kept running through as you were talking. And there's themes that came up too. And we all have themes and patterns in our lives that have shaped us and have
Mhm.
informed us and how we live. And so it's a matter of really drawing out, like, what are some of the themes in my life? Like, where do I find myself caught over and over again? Or where does grief show up for me? What are the things I'm drawn to, like water, or maybe it's more the trees and forests, or being
Mhm.
able to kind of collect, like, what is it that makes you you, and where have you come from, that has shaped who you are, and what, and the position that you're in right now. Because obviously, like you've said, it all, like, the way that we're engaging the present has so much to do with our past.
Mhm.
And so it's being able to put language, and then to ask your soul, this, our soul language, I think, is so important to be attuned to. And I think it shows up in metaphor, it shows up in symbols, it shows up in kind of imaginative ways. Um, so I think when I'm putting together a ritual for someone, it's simply just kind of noticing, like, what are the images, what are the textures, what are the colors, what are the things that a person is drawn to, as well as the particularities of their story, and the places where they get, like, stuck or caught, or your reaction to grief. Like, what is your reaction to grief? Like, what do you find yourself doing? And maybe there's an invitation to move into it in a way that's more honoring, and more containing, and where you get to symbolize it with an action, like whether it's needing to um, like knead dough, like putting
Mhm.
flour and water together,
Mhm.
and water being your tears, and dough being, or the flour being your life, and having the action of kneading it, and where you can access maybe your grief a little bit more genuinely, versus feeling like you just have to cry,
Mhm.
or these prescribed ways that we feel like we're supposed to do things. So I think it's allowing yourself um, to just check in with, like, who am I? Where have I been? What are the things that I'm drawn to? And to implement those things within rituals.
Well, Heather, would you put it that you're really a poet with the physical world? It's
Mm.
not that you don't bring language, rich language, to following a person's story, following their themes. But in some ways, like building, again, that Ebenezer, you're creating a pattern order, a structure that memorializes, but also anticipates what will one day come. So you're holding past, you're creating a future, but in some ways, as a poet in the physical world, you're calling us into the, I don't know a better word than the concreteness of life, to symbolize often things that are so vast, like Rachel sharing a deep sexual violation. How do you language that and the work of healing? It's almost too much, yet it demands something of the concrete to be able to hold with grief, but also futurity. Is again, are we in the
Mhm.
ballpark?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely in the ballpark.
Well, and I'm wondering if it's possible for you to do that now for us.
Yes, yes, I can. So if you're listening, well, you obviously are listening because you're hearing me. I need you to grab, so I'll have you pause me once I give you the items to grab in your home. But I need you guys to grab salt, something sweet, so whether it's sugar or chocolate or whatever you have in your kitchen, and then something bitter. So whether it's an herb or whether it's lemon juice, just something that has a bit more of a bitter taste. So go and grab those things, and then we'll begin. Okay, so for those of you out there, I just want you to kind of situate yourself, like remind yourself that you have a body, your feet, your legs, your stomach, your chest, your face, your hands. Just give yourself the permission to feel your body right now and to say, okay, I'm here. And I want you to just begin to, if you want to close your eyes, that might be best, but no, you don't need to. Do what's comfortable for you. And begin to just take account of the last few days, the last week even, but just to see, like, how have you been? What are the stories that are running through your head? And so take a moment and just remember to breathe deeply. And as you are a little bit more aware of how you've been, I want you to be able to taste whether that feels like there's been a sweetness or whether that's been a little more bitterness, or whether you've been like hungry, thirsty, and maybe more of a deprivation place. So that being the salt, the bitterness being the lemon or the herb, the sweetness being the sugar or whatever you grabbed. And so let your tongue taste what it's been like for you. And as you take that in, just notice what comes up for you as you're tasting whatever item it is. What are you sensing? What is it helping you move into a little bit more clearly? Do you feel yourself dropping into your body a little bit more? And if you do, just sign to your body, like let your hands kind of comfort you in some way, like just as a reminder of like, I'm here. I am witnessing some of the sweetness or the bitterness or the places of longing that are there within you. And I want you to think through, allow yourself to think about maybe a time in your past where you have felt the same exact feeling, whether it's like you have felt deprivation or whether you felt a longing that just seemed always deferred, or whether it's a place where you have felt so like angry and bitter about the circumstances. And I just want you to, bring attention to that age, that scene that you find yourself in, and let yourself look around, let your imagination kind of just see like what's there, what scene are you in, what story are you in where you've felt this before. You felt maybe a sense of futility, or out of control. And give yourself a moment to allow the story to arrive. I want you to try and picture yourself. Like, what would you be wearing? What did your hair look like? And what is your face looking like in this certain scene? And once you have kind of a good grasp on the scene, I want you to take the item that you used before, and I want you to taste it again. And this being as a testament to you witnessing yourself in this place, that this is something of you moving towards this particular story, this particular scene. So taste it and remind yourself of your body as you're in this moment. And then I want you to ask yourself, and this is something where don't feel the need to force anything, but just ask yourself in this scene that you're in with, I want you to ask yourself, what is it that you're needing? What is it that in that scene in particular that you're needing? So give yourself a moment just to invite the Spirit of God to bring to you something that might need to be known right now. And then I want you to take your good hands that you have, hands that comfort and heal and embrace and create. And I want you to find a place on your body that feels like you need to touch. So whether it's your face that you need to bring your hands up to, whether it's kind of giving yourself a hug, whether it's your hand on your heart or on your stomach. Maybe you need to even get into a fetal position. But just ask yourself, like, how do I need to move towards myself in the midst of this time? And then offer your hands that experience and your body that experience. And take a breath. And then I want you to taste one of whatever sweetness that you brought. So that's sugar or chocolate or something else. Taste it as the marking of this moment. Sweetness allows us to form memories that are lasting. So let yourself taste it and enjoy it and savor it. And then once you're ready, you can come back. Amen.
Heather, thank you. I would love to explore for you, Rachael, and I'm glad to as well. Where did that take you during that process?
Oh, it's interesting. I was just thinking about what has this week been, and I just felt the swirl, the swirl of both, I think, longing and bitterness. I think when I'm in a fight, flight, or freeze space, I'm typically lean toward fighting, and I have felt, in this particular season, just more on edge, more agitated, more angry, more scared. And so I definitely was like, all right, this is a combination of salt and lemon, which, by the way, is very potent on the tongue. And I felt that, and in some ways I felt tears kind of come pretty quickly with that. And when you said, all right, let a memory where you have felt this way before come, I mean, I laughed because it felt like a lifetime flooded before my eyes. But one particular scene when you just said, okay, like wait and let something emerge, is I had a foot surgery in 2015, but it was about 11 months of trying to heal a small bone, a sesamoid bone in my foot, and riding around on a knee scooter. And I had this image of me chunking the knee scooter, standing on one foot, like hopping out of my car, standing on one foot and chunking the knee scooter like out of the back seat because I couldn't get it out, and like throwing it onto the grass and just being like so irate, so enraged. And I think in so many ways, like feeling this desire to put my hands on my face, like when you said, but because I know in that season, I just wanted comfort like so badly. And I lived alone and people didn't show up in the way I thought they would, just kind of like intuitively. And I just was also at a place where I just refused to ask for help. It was just like, if people don't know that I need help when I literally can't walk on my foot, then like, I'm done. And so just the rage and the agitation just, I mean, I actually ended up going back to therapy really to deal with like that I couldn't ask for help, which then led to getting into some of the other healing I needed to do. And just my cry to God in that season was like, why is it so hard to like find care and nurture and comfort? And I think just feeling in this particular season back in some places where it just feels hard to find comfort right now, and so scary to ask for it. I mean, my husband and I were just talking about this the other day. Like, I have developed so many skills to find comfort by myself. And I think that's what made the foot surgery so terrifying. It was like I was kind of beyond my own capacity to comfort myself, and it was terrifying. And so even in a new marriage, the terror of needing to move towards someone to say, I think I need care and comfort, and not actually having the language to do that. So, you know, this past week, our sump pump in our basement stopped working, and our basement shower flooded with sewage water, and it was my fault. Ladies or gentlemen who use flushable wipes, they do not flush. They're not supposed to flush. So learned that the hard way. So it was my fault, you know, with all my trauma, stomach issues. Like, I was trying to take care of my body, but it was my fault. And no, there was no blame coming to me, but the shame I felt like just in this season, it was just like I picked so many fights and could not move toward a sense of like, I just need comfort and care, and just almost was like, because I don't think that's available, I will just fight and push away. So again, it's a really long story to say that's where all of that took me, to all those places, and not like as deeply, but just like very rapidly. And I think just that sense of like, I know I'm meant for comfort, and I know comfort is available to me more than I perceive that it is. And not always, and that's not true for everyone, but to taste sugar and be reminded, that there is a tenderness for my face that's available to me, that there is a capacity to be held, to be able to cry and feel small and vulnerable with God or with the people I love, without, you know, fear of retribution or shame or humiliation. At least that's the longing of my heart. And often just feels so hard. So that's where I went.
It's so sweet to hear how one taste being led by a wise woman can hold that much. And for me, I would not have anticipated anything that occurred. My first thought was, I feel so alone. In my office, two dear friends that I cannot see, but I can visualize. I just felt alone. And so I took in lemon. And then when you invited us to remember another moment like that, like I did, I just gave something of my heart to the Spirit. What do you want to bring? And what I came back to May 5th. Today is May 5th. And that is 50 years ago, when I was on the campus of Ohio State, rioting, burning down with about 200 other people, an ROTC building after 4 students had been shot at Kent State. Why? I mean, I wasn't even aware. Other than yesterday, I was aware. But today, why would that thought come back? And then I began to visualize myself walking away, actually running because we were chased by the police, but eventually walking away utterly alone, having done this violent, horrible act. And yet I'm walking away utterly alone. And in that, that sense of, what do I do with how alone I feel? And when you invited us to the sweetness, it was back to, as I think about 50 years passing, I'm still a revolutionary. And yet I get to play in this occasion with two stunningly brilliant, beautiful, gifted women. And I'm not alone. Just that reminder of, I'm alone. I'm not alone.
Mhm.
I could not have imagined when we began this that that would be held in that short a period of time.
Oh man, yeah. It's the worlds we possess within us, and that need expression. Where we don't even know it. Yeah, there's something about both of your stories. My goodness, I'll do rituals for you any day if you.
Well, let's just say we invite that and we have participated in that countless times. Well, as we come to an end, I just want to remind people that you exist and you exist and
I do.
have the ability to invite not just us, but for other major moments. So, lifeinritual.com. It is a stunningly beautiful website. Heather, it is gorgeous. So,
Thank you.
folks, we invite you to Heather, but we invite you far more to the glorious rituals, which really are a liturgy, like the Lord's table, where we take in that which symbolizes, but actually tells a larger story that we're meant to come back to again and again in order to invite our hearts to become what we're meant to be. So, invite you to not only return to routine, but begin to play and experiment with ritual.
Amen.
And we thank you, Heather, for coming and playing with us, and on behalf of our audience, and also obviously on behalf of ourselves. So thank you.
Yes, it is my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me and risking with me. It's so good.
The Allender Center podcast is produced by the Seattle School of Theology and Psychology.
If you'd like more information about the Allender Center, you can look at theallendercenter.org.